Hey guys, it's Michi here with a quick show note. Before we begin, due to the nature of the source material, a quick trigger warning. This episode will contain talk of incest, SA, murder, abusive behavior, and institutional abuse. If you are not in the right headspace for this episode, that is perfectly okay. We will catch you in the next one. Otherwise, enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eternal Mooncast, the streaming show all about Sailor Moon fan theories. We cover everything from the prominent to the obscure in the Mooniverse. I'm your host, Michi, with my special co-host for this episode, our producer, Loki. And joining us tonight is Elle of LaVie Cosplay. Elle is one half of the duo LaVie Cosplay, who has been entertaining convention goers for over 10 years. Elle started her cosplay journey 25 years ago and has participated in numerous events nationally and internationally as a competitor and guest. Elle is best known as one of the hosts of For Shenanigans Cosplayers Say, a comedy podcast covering their neurodivergent adventures and con-going and creating. The podcast covers subjects such as mental health, competitions, and convention chaos. Welcome, Elle.
But first, a quick Mooney disclaimer. We would like to remind everyone that these are just our personal opinions. We do not in any way represent Toei or the Sailor Moon intellectual property. And we invite you to join us when we stream live on Twitch or join our Discord. Tonight, we're going to delve into how the Utena movie was, quote unquote, supposed to be about Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune.
Which I feel like that's such a loaded statement.
That's why I
So
said supposed in quote.
before we get into it, we should cite where this whole thing came from, because there's a very good article on Wikimedia. And it literally reads, the Revolutionary Girl Utena series, and this is all from Wikimedia, was a series co-created by Ikuhara after he finished working on Sailor Moon Supers. Some of the team that worked on Sailor Moon also worked on Utena, most notably the voice actors such as Kotono Mitsuishi and Aya Hisakawa. The series is particularly notable because certain elements were derived from the original plot of Sailor Moon Supers movie. This story was devised by Ikuhara and producer Iriya Azuma, and Azuma left Sailor Moon team before the movie went into production. Ikuhara therefore opted not to use the script. According to Ikuhara, it was going to be a story in which Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune were the main characters. It was going to be a story independent to the TV series, and this was going to be the first appearance of Uranus and Neptune. And Neptune was going to be in 1,000 years sleep at a palace called the End of the World. And Sailor Uranus was needed to steal the talismans from the Sailor Senshi and use that to awaken Sailor Neptune. And Uranus was going to be riding a black Pegasus. The story was going to be that Sailor Moon would ride the Pegasus to chase Sailor Uranus, riding the black Pegasus to the end of the world. And the climax of the story would have been the rodeo scene between Sailor Moon on the white Pegasus and Sailor Uranus on the black Pegasus. And so this was kind of the story I had in mind, but before production began, the producer walked off Sailor Moon. It would have been possible for me to make the story still, but since I came up with the story with the producer, I also walked off. But I had an attraction to the idea of at the end of the world, which I thought up for this plot. So the same thing in Utena comes from the Sailor Moon plot.
I'm personally glad that we didn't get that movie.
I know you are.
And not because I don't want a Uranus and Neptune movie, but because that is a plot.
Okay, but it's something. Yes, exactly, tape player. So that's what I said when we were doing the episode. When we were doing the episode on the third movie, we actually went, and there is a black and white Pegasus that Amphi and Utena ride in the opening.
For the movie?
No, for the series.
Oh, I don't give a shit about the series. We're not talking about the series.
Nope, but didn't Utena happen after Sailor Moon?
Yes. But same animation company, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I believe so. That sounds right. But I'm still very glad that was not a Sailor Moon movie, because that would be entirely obscure and entirely too left field for Sailor Moon, in my opinion.
I get it because they're both school animes with magic, but, like, vastly different.
It's so different, and I don't know, watching watching Utena, which, to be fair, it's been a while since I've seen the series. The movie I literally just rewatched the other day. But trying to compare the psychological psychosis of Utena versus versus like Sailor Moon still has a lot of thinky, like cerebral-esque moments, but it's much more emotional versus like cerebral.
Yes. Utena is a fever dream, especially the
Truly.
3rd season of
Truly.
Utena. If anyone has actually sat down and watched the 3rd season of Utena,
I believe I did. I don't remember.
I couldn't tell you. I have a minor in philosophy. I almost don't know what happened. I watched it because when the box sets came out on Blu-ray, like, a few years ago, of course, I bought all of them because I love Utena. And I hadn't seen the 3rd season yet because you
Mhm,
couldn't get that on fan sub
mhm.
VHS in the early 2000s. The 3rd one just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I was so excited, hoping that it would finally answer what on earth this anime is supposed to. No,
No.
it did not. It just makes you really hate everyone.
TLDR
There's a
page with me.
bad person in Utena except for Anthe. Everyone.
And that also depends on one of my exes had a real problem with Anthe. She was saying that, oh, Anthe left Utena just behind, just because. And I'm like, I don't, that's not the reason, but sure. And then when you watch the movie, it makes sense, except you still have to read a shit ton of articles
Yes.
to figure out what the hell is happening. I do want to talk real quick about Ikuhara's directing style in Sailor Moon versus the Utena movie,
Yeah, let's
um,
break that down.
because I feel like there's a lot there, but I want to know what you guys think.
Sailor Moon Supers is such an interesting series to me. Rini is the main character. We get the most wild villains, in my opinion, out of the entire series until that point. Because the Witches Five were a little funny, but like the Amazon trio and the Amazonas quartet are legendary. And it's interesting because there were no lesbians in the season. They got rid of Haruka and Michiru in the anime. So it's, and then switching it over, the Utena movie feels so much more philosophical. The one's all about dreams and like all that good stuff and like finding out like what you really want and what you really believe in. And then Utena is like this whole other side of like adulthood and like coming into your own, and it's just so different.
I think you just brought up a really good point, and that pinged my little synapses. Sailor Moon is all about your dreams and what you want in life and how you're going to get it. Utena, very specifically the movie, is processing your fucking past trauma, first of all.
Yeah.
And secondly, how you're going to use that as a stepping stone to grow up. It actually is trying to like catapult you into adulthood versus in Sailor Moon, you can stay in the dream world. You can keep dreaming and being fluffy and sweet and amazing while Utena is
Yes. Probably should say disclaimer, if you go to watch this movie, it may be really triggering for some people.
it is
Like,
it can
legit.
be very triggering.
There's some pretty graphic things that occur in Utena that could be very triggering for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Which is why Michi kept being like, I should get high and watch it. And I'm like, don't. Do not.
You'll have an existential crisis if you do that.
On top of the existential crisis
Right?
that you're already having. Yeah.
It's like double the fun, double existential crisis. Let's not do that. Don't do that to yourself. Utena's enough on its own. I could not imagine.
We have a power structure to burn. Yeah. That's the bit.
We got
Yes.
You're not wrong. But oh, that's just so interesting because they're both about growing up. Because the fourth season of Sailor Moon is dealing with that childhood into teenagerhood, because technically they're 14, 15, which right. But I didn't really put that together. They're both about adolescence.
Yeah. And the movie is literally called The Adolescence of Utena, or I believe, what's the original Japanese? Adolescence Apocalypse?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which, bitch. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure season 3 is also something apocalypse too.
Probably.
It's a lot of
The
fun.
apocalypse is very much the intertwined theme in
Mhm.
Utena, which is why, like, the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. The other side also is another way that they put it. There's a lot of I'm just gonna lay it out right now. If you do end up watching the Utena movie, please keep in mind, first of all, it deals with a lot of death, it deals with a lot of sexual, deals with really shitty emotional trauma, deals with, on the surface, it deals with riots. So it's wild. And that's all in what, 2 hours?
Not even. I don't
Not
even think
even.
it's that long, is it?
Let me look it up.
I want to say that the one that I was watching was like either
1
2
hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
There we go.
And basically an hour and a half, you're dealing with a whole fucking lot. And there's so much symbolism, but I think it's really interesting how in Sailor Moon, it really feels like Ikuhara is being really limited in like how and what he could show and direct,
Mhm.
probably because Naoko was like, "Hey buddy, rein it in, homie, please." Whereas this will be our next talking point, but he did end up butting some heads with Chiho Saito.
You can definitely see the similarities in the I noticed the animation style a little bit more even as well. You can see through the animation style how some of the directing is similar, especially in the quote unquote magical girl transformations. That's when I see the Sailor Moon Utena connection the most direction wise is the like magical girl sequences that you get.
Mhm.
But
I also see
otherwise it just doesn't you wouldn't know. I feel like you wouldn't know it was the same director.
Yeah. And I think it's because he was able to just on Utena because it's already so freaking weird.
I wanted to say that something that Ikuhara did really well that I see the more emotional gift that he had for what he did is especially in the Amazon trio,
Mm.
because their whole plot was literally about existence and their
Mhm.
souls. And I feel like the Utena movie is similar. Because to me, the Amazon trio was the darkest of the villains of
Oh.
Sailor Moon. Because I cry every time at that ending. Oh, this is a good question tape player just asked. I'm not familiar with a lot of magical girl transformations. Did Utena do them similar to other series?
Utena's magical girl transformation happens more with her interactions with Anthe
Mhm.
than herself. So when she gets the sword of Dios, you get something really similar to a magical girl transformation that is typically meant to represent the bond between Anthe and Utena and the bond between the Rose Bride and all the things that Utena tries to cram into one thing because that's what it's famous for.
気高き城のバラよ私に眠るディオスの力よ主に応えて今こそ示せ
Let's put 500 pieces of symbolism onto one thing and see if you can remember all of the things that go with the one thing. That's its like thing. That's like the part that makes me think of the magical girl the most with Utena.
And specifically in the movie,
Yes, specifically the movie.
Specifically in the movie, there is when you see Utena at first, she's got short hair, which fun fact, because I used to be obsessed with the adolescence of Utena, which like explains a lot about me right now. But fun fact, her hair is not actually short. It is
Oh,
braided and
oh,
plucked
Uh-huh.
to be short.
you're joking.
I am so serious.
I've
right
heard
now.
that as well. Yeah.
It's if
Yeah.
I'm remembering correctly, it's in the freaking like art book.
Are you serious?
I have the art book. I'll have
Swear
to
to
go
God.
look. Because I
Bring
have
on
the
the
Adolescence of Utena art book.
He's on break. Go get that book.
If I'm remembering correctly, literally there's a portion where it's the back of her head and you see the braided pattern of her hair going up and being braided. A lot of Utena's transformations, quote unquote, is her like suddenly getting long flowing hair, especially in the movie. And
Her hair being up into some sort of updo would make more sense
Yeah.
than you have short hair, now magically you have long hair. Because
But
that's how Auntie's hair works too.
it's
So-
supposed to symbolize her being selfless. And the only times that she has this long, girly hair is when she being selfless and not selfish
Mhm.
and making sure to look after other people. So one of our next talking points is Ikuhara had to actually fight with Chiho Saito about Utena and Anthe being romantically involved.
Mhm.
And them actually being a couple, despite the fact, or in spite of the fact, that pretty much at you could open any scene with them and they look like a freaking couple. It's not even, oh, they might be together. No, Utena is the champion and Anthe is the rose bride. It's not subtle.
And they make a lot of references to the Rose Bride champion pairing having those connotations, like a romantic relationship connotation. Forced romantic relationship with a
Yeah.
lot of the champions. It's so heavily implied that I think it'd have to smack you across the face.
I mean, in the literally, Anthe's like, hey girl, what's
Yes.
up? And Utena's, whoa.
That scene in the anime is not quite that forward, but Anthe's a completely different character in the movie than
Oh,
she is
Anthe.
in the series. Completely different character. So you can't even really compare series Anthe to movie Anthe because they don't behave the same way.
No.
Not at all.
But the series, it's like you could try to argue that they're not together, although it's super heavily implied. But the movie, it's like, if you watch this and you still think they're not together, I don't know how to help you.
There's literally no help for you.
Yeah, it's so obvious. And I don't
found
think the
it.
movie
Sorry.
would have worked otherwise either.
Agreed.
You found it?
I found it. You found it? Yay!
Sorry, I got really excited.
That's exciting.
Also, I
Okay.
agree with Tape Player over here. The only thing I'm certain about them being a couple is if Utena know.
Truly.
What an actual
Truly.
mother! You gotta be kidding me. This picture is
Oh,
right in this
yes.
wall. I'm about to share it. I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. It's braided.
Yes.
It's braided.
It
My mind is
is.
blown. What?
I do think this is in the book I have. I'll have to look later. It's either in the book I have or in the back of the manga for Adolescence of Utena. I'm not sure.
My gosh.
Like
I
I
can't-
said,
no,
I
that's
knew
it, yeah.
that it was high school was a fever dream, but I remember this.
I have a new fun fact.
Oh,
Okay.
everyone that has cosplayed this.
Hasn't
one,
technically
friends.
done it correctly.
This is what we're supposed to do. I don't know. Accuracy is not necessary in cosplay.
Eh.
It's fine. I would still buy a short wig. I wouldn't want to deal with that. Thanks.
I think that was one of Utena's strongest writing parts is that they were a couple and that they found each other.
Is there like a particular reason he had to fight the author so hard?
From what I read very quickly is basically that Chiho Saito did not want to announce them as a couple.
Oh, okay. So he didn't want to confirm it. He wanted to leave it open,
She.
ambiguous, or she.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the author. It was the mangaka that was against it,
Mm.
who then later on was like, yeah, I guess you could see them as a married couple. But I'm like, why did someone have to fight tooth and nail for that? Like, why couldn't you have just been like, yeah, if that's what you want, then that's what you want.
This would have been what? Early 2000s?
The Utena movie came out in 1999.
So this was also a much different time.
Yes, however, Sailor Moon
That's true.
was
That's
coming
true.
out prior to that.
That's
So-
true. But they were cousins for us.
For Americans.
For the Americans.
In that
And then we
awful-
didn't get stars.
But for the
Right.
Japanese audience, apparently Saito Sensei was just really digging her heels into the fact that they were not a couple, and he had to fight for he being Ikuhara had to fight for from what I'm understanding, even for the movie and the ending of the movie.
That's wild.
The ending's pretty wild. So
Yeah, the ending was also what I was like, ooh, I guess I am into chicks. Whew. Let's talk about how I think I just made this up in my head, but I still think it's interesting to think about. The Utena movie was made because Now didn't want an Outers movie. Ikuhara had to have an outlet.
Which it's like, why?
To be honest, if someone had come up to me, if I was Naoko and someone came up to me with that plot, I would be like,
It isn't out there plot for Sailor Moon.
it doesn't follow any of her formula.
No.
Which I think is why, very rightfully, she was like, no, thank you. It's great, but no, thank you.
And it's interesting because Haruka and Michiru got more story in the manga than they ever did in the
Mhm.
90s anime in the 4th season. So it's a lot of interesting decisions back then.
Which, seeing a lesbian couple on screen, on national television, basically, is this what we're doing? Is very much different than them being behind a closed cover back in the day. Even now, but back in the day especially, Japan was not the best when it came to LGBTQIA rights and stuff like that.
Well, that's a good question, Sailor Denzel.
Hmm.
Do you think that he would use their high school as a setting or the Moon Kingdom? Yes, technically this is the first appearance of Uranus and Neptune, so it could go either way.
If we're going based off of Utena is his second choice because he couldn't get the movie he wanted, essentially. Their setup looks more like the Moon Kingdom than their school because they spend more time in the duelist ring, which reminds me more of the castle than the Crystal Palace instead of
And the Utena school, whose name I can't think of right now, the academy,
Yeah.
is very much Moon Kingdom coded.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. The elevator. That's what I think. Like when they go up to the
Spire.
student council
Mhm.
and it's up in the big spire and it has all the scroll work and everything.
Very Moon Kingdom coded.
Looks very much like a Moon Kingdom. Yeah. And there are roses everywhere.
And then tape player also asked, did any other Sailor Moonisms make it into the movie aside from the Pegasuses? How Utena acts in the beginning, Hello Kitten, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Uranus coded.
Yes.
Is that what the English version was?
Yeah, it
Yes.
literally Hello Kitten.
Oh. Yeah.
For
Wow.
that brief period that she's got the short hair,
Mhm.
there's a lot of Haruka-isms that happen. And then it just disappears.
It's weird.
And then we have regular Uten again. And I'm like, so did maybe he'll start writing the movie and then didn't want to start over? So we just used
I think what it probably was is, and this is a whole analysis of it also. Short-haired Utena is confident Utena. Short-haired Utena is an Utena that knows what she wants. Long-haired Utena is just now getting used to the idea that she is not who thinks she is. And that's a whole different situation for that. That first scene with Watanabe in the Japanese version is, I think, even more Haruka coded because the question was posed of like, how was your first day of school? And Utena replies with, it's much better now if I get to hang out with a cute girl like you. And I'm like, Haruka?
Is that you? Honestly, because Elle and I were watching the movie together, and the beginning I was just like, I'm sorry, is Haruka in this film?
Yeah. And I think it's because also anytime that we as Moonies see a confident queer woman, we pretty much immediately think of Haruka.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that Michiru is not confident, but she's a different sort of confidence.
It's a
than Riz,
different,
for sure.
and it's a Utena with short hair and Haruka are very similar, but I wouldn't say Amphi and Michiru have a lot in common.
No, not at all.
No. Yeah.
Lightly put, Anthe is not by her own choice.
Yeah, it's a response to trauma.
But she is still lovingly in the most loving way possible. I gripe a lot on Anthe, but I really love her, especially in the movie, because she's a bitch that knows what she wants. Once she figures out what it is that she wants, and she has the tools, i.e. Utena, to get said thing, she's a bitch that knows what she wants.
Movie Anthe is most similar to season 3 Anthe. So if you
Mhm.
watch the last season, you start to see where the correlations between these two.
Which, from what I'm understanding, the movie is supposed to be like the continuation of the
Yes,
anime.
I
So
believe so, but yep. Season 3 ends really weird. I can't even explain it. Y'all just have to go watch it because
yeah.
there's no explanation for the confession room and the butterfly, and that you just gotta go watch it.
It took me a few tries to get it.
Yes. Yeah, I've had to watch, and I can't watch the dub because Utena's voice drives me nuts. I have to watch it subbed, and I've had to like watch and then reverse and watch a scene again to be like, what did I just watch? And the movie
Ramona?
feels like that a lot too, where you have to stop and go back
Yeah.
so your brain can process what you just watched.
Hey, player just breaks up. I've heard that the movie is essentially Ampy going back to get Utena, but I can't find any concrete proof myself.
I could see that. I could totally see that. That actually would make a lot of sense because it's like you get that alternate universe vibe at the end of the seasons.
I actually
see that.
feel like in my brief reading of of all of the analyses and everything like that, if I'm remembering correctly, which don't quote me on it, but I believe that's almost right with Anthe going back to get Utena. It was worded differently though, and I can't remember how it was worded. But tape player, you're on the mark.
Mhm.
That's I think what it is not necessarily Anthe going back to get Utena.
Would you guys say that Ampy freed Utena?
It's almost what she's doing in the movie.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
interesting as a parallel, would you say that Michiru saved Haruka
From what?
Yeah.
herself, honestly?
Haruka would be a very different person if she didn't have Michiru to.
Because she literally ran away from her destiny.
I don't know if I could say that was a save, and more like Michi is Haruka's impulse control.
Yeah.
Whereas Anthe is confidence. It's a different sort of save. Because for Anthe, she's Utena's like confidence and bravery and literally the kick in the ass to grow up. Whereas with Haruka and Michi, like I said, I feel like Michi is more like the impulse control and the voice of reason, but neither of them are actually reasonable.
Because I'd say the episode where Uranus meets Neptune in season 3 is the most similar to the movie to me because it plays on the same themes of destiny and of accept. If you argue with me, tell me I'm wrong. But just to see what you two think. That's just Haruka and Michiru to me always had an undertone of a different story that was being written.
In my opinion, and I do be having a lot of those, Utena is less about destiny. It's less about some far off thing versus self reflection and being grown up and becoming a grown up. Whereas again, in general, with Sailor Moon, it is very much about your destiny, your long future, how you're going to be in the future versus the immediate, in 3 months, you got to get your shit together. Okay. I want to talk about Utena Movie versus Sailor Moon, very specifically Uranus and Neptune. Compare, contrast. How would you like to see a Outers movie? What would you like to see? Would it be anything like Utena, or would it be something completely, I don't know, the freaking Matrix or something? I don't like
Bahar was giving us, I guess this isn't the end of the world. Like, how much farther can we shoot?
Paprika.
I was just more intrigued by the chaos that this could have been if it had been a Sailor Moon movie as opposed to Utena. Not necessarily that I think it would have been a good movie, because I agree with Loki, it doesn't match. It doesn't match the series in and of itself. I think it would have been intriguing to see what would have essentially been a more adult version of Sailor Moon, because the Una themes are very adult and in your face. So if they had maintained that, we would have had a more adult Sailor Moon movie, which I think could actually be really interesting, because I couldn't think of two characters I'd rather do that with than Haruka and Michiru. But I wouldn't say that the Utena movie with them stuck in it would have been the movie I would choose.
Mhm.
So something that fits in the universe but has a more adult plot is the
Mhm.
movie that I would want to see for both.
Fair enough.
I would actually like to go back in the series. I love Ikuhara, don't get me wrong. Ikuhara, chef it. But I would have liked to see a more toned down movie about Neptune awakening herself
Mm.
and then her journey to finding Uranus. Not just
Mm.
an episode, but expand it into their total backstory, but in the Sailor Moon universe, like Elle said, where it's going to school and then not so much the end of the world, but
The
Car
car
and who would be the driver?
As this is one of my dream photo shoots, because I will cosplay Toga. I will do it at some
Oh
point.
my god, yeah.
that's
And I've already been like, who can get me a red car? Because
I'm
I need this to happen in my life. At some point in time, I need to cosplay Toga, and I need to pose on a red convertible. I love him. He's a terrible person, but I love him. They're all terrible
terrible people.
They're horrible people. Toga is like one of the worst people in existence. I don't care. I still love him.
like
Crispin Freeman, I love you.
Yeah.
But we didn't answer who would ride on the car, though,
Yeah.
from Sailor Moon. Get to see Seiya riding on the car.
Yeah.
I get 100% see Seiya, so I also have to do
Seiya?
this as Seiya.
they are all terrible people.
They're just different degrees of terrible people, really.
And honestly, one of the interesting things within Sailor Moon, I feel like even the lead is that not everybody is terrible and they can get redemption.
Right, and it's one of the big differences with Utena is there's not always a redemption for these characters.
No.
Sometimes they just continue down a path that is not great, and they don't become self-aware of the path that they're on.
Would you say that they're better or worse in the movie?
Worse in the movie. Everyone is a really terrible person in the movie, because there are some of the characters get somewhat of a redemption in the series. The one that hits me is Jury really get not a great person in the movie. Has a little bit more of a redemption in the series. But they're definitely all far worse people in the movie. They make it very obvious that everyone's a terrible person. But Anthony's not the best person either in the movie, which is the thing that you don't get with the series is she's the only one the whole time you're just like, you're not a terrible person, you're in a terrible situation. And in the
Absolutely.
movie, sometimes she's a terrible person. But we're all terrible people sometimes. That's just a thing. Everyone is that sometimes.
Yeah, everybody has
Petition
their moments.
to rate Cow Nanami 110%.
I love Nanami, particularly Cow Nanami. That episode is fabulous.
That portion of the movie has absolutely no reason to be there,
Oh,
but
well,
I'm
'cause
so happy that it was.
I know. There's a whole episode of Cow Nanami, and then there's the random appearance in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Better in the movie having died. Facts.
True. I love Nanami. Cow Nanami.
Wow.
Explained in the episode, because isn't that the curry episode too? That she turns into. She
gonna
gets
say-
the bell as a gift, and then she wears it, and it turns her into a cow.
And
It's
if I
one that they're
remember
like,
afterwards, after because she ends up somehow being able to get it off, right?
yes, but I don't remember. It's one of their weird filler episodes because they
Yeah.
would do bizarre. Because there's one about Curry that does something similar too, but not to her. To might have been Akio. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've sat down and watched this entire series.
Funny, in Sailor Moon Supers, Ikuhara was making filler episodes about going to the dentist, and then he gets into Utena and you're a cow.
You're a cow
Mhm.
now. A cow.
Carol,
Oh, Nanami. Poor Nanami.
Nanami had a
Nanami is actually one of the least terrible people because Nanami is also buried under her trauma.
Nanami needs therapy.
Nanami needs a
they
lot
need
of
therapy.
Yeah,
They-
they-
yes, there's a lot of I'm in love with my brother and
Yeah.
things going on, and it's not.
Because I was listening to you guys while I was tinkling, I would say that the movie personalities and backstories are the excruciatingly concentrated, condensed versions from the series. That being said, Juri is still my favorite.
Yeah.
And I will die for her because she's put under a lot of pressure, even in the movie. That's her whole shtick. She's under a lot of pressure. Does it absolve her of her sins? No. But I still absolutely adore her, no matter what. Can we talk about the symbolism in Sailor Moon and Utena?
Let's talk. Honestly, we could do an entire episode just on that.
First, we have to understand the symbolism.
We can just take it at face value.
True.
For example, when I was rewatching the movie for Utena, I completely forgot that her sense of homophobia. Yeah. Yeah. And
There's
especially
so many
internalized
spoilers.
homophobia. But when I was rewatching the movie, I completely forgot, or my brain just glossed over the fact that the main rose bed. And yes, I know, spoiler alert, Akio's buried under it. But it's a literal grave with crosses sticking out everywhere and roses and blah blah blah. And I completely forgot about portion of the pan through of the academy, but I did not forget about the frankly excessive use of the color red.
Oh yeah.
Did anyone, I don't know if you guys were watching it with the same lens of actually looking for the symbolism. Anytime that Anthe is on the screen, that is the most amount of red.
Really?
I could
Mhm.
see that.
She killed her own brother.
Mhm.
Did she? Yeah, she did, but didn't. But did he deserve it? Absolutely. But yeah, that's when there's the most amount of red.
And it's interesting because Uranus and Neptune color scheme, complete opposite. Now, I will say there are still roses.
Loves a good rose.
Are
A
as
good rose.
But let's compare Haruka and Utena. What would you say is Utena's goal in the movie? We know Haruka's goal. Literally, it's protect the princess, get the talismans, save the world. Which Utena technically, it's still the end of the world, just a little different. But would you say Utena grows the same way as Haruka?
They don't have the same trauma.
True.
That's probably the biggest difference between those two characters is the amount of trauma that Utena holds in comparison to Haruka. Because boy, Utena.
Then again, we don't really know what trauma Haruka went through.
True.
Is her backstory complete mystery?
Yes, but asterisk. Haruka was not a tryhard.
No.
And what I mean by that is Haruka did not aspire, because I'm specifically looking at movie Utena. Haruka did not aspire to be a prince. Haruka was confident enough in herself to just be like, yeah, I'm fucking hot shit. Deal with it.
She was the prince.
Yeah, I do think one of the biggest differences between those two characters is Utena is actually not a confident person. It's an act for Utena. Utena is not a confident person at all. It's more apparent in the series than in the movie, I feel, but it's an act. She feels like she needs to be someone else because she cannot be herself. Which Anthe's role is partly to help Utena find herself. That's part of the purpose of Anthe, which I think is more obvious in the movie than in the series.
Because in the series, you could argue that Utena did not, in fact, find herself because she did not go to school.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I would say that's what happens with the series. Anthe finds herself, but Utena does not.
Would you say then Utena finds herself when Anthe comes back for her?
That's what happens. And the movie is supposed to be Anthe essentially returning to try to bring Utena with her. The movie would suggest that Utena does find herself by the end of it.
And that could be why it ended. Happy ending.
Is there anything happy about Utena?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a happy.
Yeah.
It was an ending.
Yes.
It was an ending of adolescence.
yes.
period.
But the world is still falling apart around them.
Yeah, it's
So-
still the end of the world.
Yeah.
Which is also like a huge metaphor for growing up and blah blah blah. And yeah, it's the end of the world when I have to pay taxes. So I totally get it.
Adulthood is the end of the world. We get it.
Tape player, I see that you said, do you think Utena grows in a way that's different to how she grew in the series? She didn't grow in the series, technically.
Technically, yeah.
She
Oh.
had a little growth.
She did have a
Didn't
little
get
bit of
all the way. Get all the way there.
I just remembered what I was going to say. If we're assuming that the movie is Anthe coming back for Utena, that would make sense as to why Anthe is such a different character.
Yes.
Because she is, and now that I'm like thinking about it, she is more adult. She is more
Mhm.
mature. Yeah, that makes sense now.
Because it also would imply that she already knows what's going to happen, which would give her more confidence. Because they've essentially gone back. It's like alternate universe back in time kind of
Mhm.
situation. So that would also explain why she responds to things before she should have the information for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a parallel for you.
Yes, Michi.
Ooh.
Anthe coming back for Utena the movie is similar to Neptune coming back for Uranus in the 3rd season.
Oh, I can see
Because
it.
they're both Haruka in the episode where she meets Michiru is not confident to me. She plays it, but she is not confident. And especially, I'd say in herself, she is the least confident because you see her questioning a lot.
When you find the right partner, the amount of confidence that you suddenly have.
That makes sense.
That is a very good point.
Am I speaking from actual IRL experience? Yes. Is my spouse my Anthe? We're both Anthe in our own way. And we're both Utena in our own way. Michi,
There-
I'm like watching the gears turn for you, and I love it. What's up?
Because my brain is on the movie where they die the first time. Not the first time. I don't remember what time it is. But when they die in the cathedral.
Okay.
That, I think, is Ikuhara going off. That whole double episode.
In my opinion, that is basically what Anthe was forcing Utena to do. And occasionally, Michi and Haruka have the hard conversations. But
Oh, I would give so much money to get the episode after the Marine Cathedral. No, Oko, just give me like a fan fiction. Just name your price. Name your price. I need to know.
now that you've said it, the fan fiction probably exists.
I read everyone.
When was the last time you updated that list?
Like a year.
Oh,
I'm
there's
sure
gotta be
there's
more
been
than-
more. Do we have any other symbolism in both Sailor Moon and Utena that would be relevant?
We eventually have to talk about the car scene.
I was gonna. Well, yeah. There's cars, right?
Yeah.
Cars. Car wash.
Car wash.
Car
which-
wash.
The one frame in the car wash of Utena is where the entire budget went. And you can't convince me otherwise because that frame is so different from the rest of the freaking movie. That's the frame. For what reason was that so beautifully rendered?
Like this whole scene, I just have questions.
So I still remember because I watched this movie for the first time, I think when I was probably like 16 or 17 years old, right?
Mhm.
And I remember watching this in my parents' basement with my friend. And I remember pausing it when this part happened, going, what are we watching right now?
Mhm.
What is happening? Because I have no idea where this car wash came from.
And wash a car wash.
It could be they're washing away all of something. Trauma?
Is this literally a transformation from into adulthood?
I think what it's
Probably.
I think what it's trying to very abstractly say is there's a point in time right before this where Utena is naked as they're drawing each other for like art class or whatever.
Mhm.
And Anthe says you have to see the essence of your partner. And I think this is Utena being distilled for Anthe into the essence that Utena needs. Because this whole situation is, while Anthe is the one driving the car, as you will see, or you may not see. But anyway, as Anthe is the one that's driving the car, she is taking Utena to adulthood. I don't know. I also
That's this car, too.
There's the car.
yeah,
With the Utena license plate. Iconic.
truly. I freaking love
Also, I just
This
love
vehicle.
Anthe's expression. Like, what the
Anthe's expression is my expression when I first I was like,
And-
I'm certainly witnessing something.
And then it gets rust.
Because a car without a key will stand still and rust.
Oh, symbolism.
That's the whole
Oh, your tape player has a question. Let's go back to the key.
questions about the key symbolizing something, also the really fast rust. It literally, so there's a portion in the movie where this is after Anthe is essayed by her brother, who thought that he had drugged her but didn't. Anyway, and he is looking for a key, but he literally says a car without a key will stand still and rust, which I personally think that if you do not have the outside force forcing you to move forward, the key
Yeah.
and the car, you will rust. You are the car, you will stand still. You will never change, you will never move forward. And also you will never grow up.
Mhm.
Because
Oh.
Akio is an adult, presumably, an adult in the school.
Yes, I
Yes.
believe so.
Anthe and the Mark of the Rose is thank you, baby.
I love Celine being the cheering section.
Anthe and the Mark of the Rose, the ring, turning into the key. That's the outside forces forcing Utena to move forward, whether she fucking likes it or not. And that's what this whole movie, in my opinion, is the opposite of put that back, so help me God. It's pretty much, if you don't fucking get off your ass. That's pretty much the motto of the movie.
Mhm.
Get your shit together and go. I don't know if
Right.
any of that made sense, but
Did. I love that it's a rose, too, to put the key inside.
which also that's a whole other metaphor of deflowering.
I didn't realize that. And look, danger ahead. You will die.
I also love how a lot of these background cars, I will call them, because I hate Shiori, and she's a background character for me. They look like Gundams.
To
Yeah.
me, they look like Transformers.
Also that. You can technically argue that a Gundam is a Transformer and vice versa.
Also, that line. That line is so good. Do you think you're the only one who can transform into a car?
Also, the other cars are all black Pegasi.
And I wonder if Utena is the white Pegasus.
It shouldn't die.
This whole scene is really interesting.
Yeah. It's something.
Yep.
It's
And then,
certainly
look,
something.
more red.
And it's so sleek. My God. Doesn't that look like the Outlaw from Outlaw Star?
Yes, it so does.
Every
then-
single time I see it, I'm like,
And then it's interesting because if you look, it feels like Anthe is the one powering them forward, even though Utena is the car.
Utena is the vehicle. To escape high school, you must first Yes.
Honestly, that's what it feels like.
This is Anthe's witness me moment. But also, low-key, this, castle underneath the castle portion always gave me anxiety.
Driving.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, okay, let's talk about this. The car is literally being destroyed
Mm-hmm.
by the outside world.
Mhm.
Is what a metaphor.
I would argue that this is not the outside world.
Oh,
I would argue that this is the final portions of adolescence.
and it's Red caught.
She's not wrong.
No,
It could also technically be a penis.
It's very phallic too.
It's
Yes.
very phallic. Which can say also a lot because the whole thing is about women and female power
Mm-hmm.
and accepting yourself as a powerful woman and a confident woman. I feel like this is very much like the very final portions of adolescence that you are subconsciously clinging to or very consciously clinging to.
Also, interesting choice. Look, what is the color of what is pushing it together?
It's red.
Mhm.
And I believe the castle is
Oh, hair.
shaded in red as well in some portions. And Anthony is wearing red. And also, this is the only time, this being the movie, not this particular scene, the movie is the only time that Anthe has a bindi.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes. Particular scene, or this particular portion from the car wash on, when she gets into the car, is the only time that she has a double bindi. She's got the dot and then the drop underneath.
Mm-hmm.
I am not an expert on the coding / language of the use of bindis at all. I don't want to go into it. The only thing that I can say is, if I am remembering correctly, you have a bindi when you are married.
Oh,
You have a
believe so.
particular bindi when you have married.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, yes, Anthe is the Rose Bride, which means that she is getting married. But is this double bindi a whole new thing? Her actually accepting a marriage, adulthood.
Oh, like she's already accepted it, and that's why? That would be interesting. No, I wish we had somebody who was knowledgeable about that subject.
Much like Disney, it's also controlled by a dead man, tape player,
Good sir.
and or madam.
What? Who is this that they're depicting in this moment?
Akio.
Yeah, and then literally bursting through.
Yep.
In a flame of red roses.
Yep. And you can also argue, or you don't have to argue it.
It's an
The Rose
interesting
Bride,
thing.
every girl is a Rose Bride, as in Promise to Men. Yeah.
All right. Looks like that was it for that.
Yeah, that's probably wise because the rest of it would be TOS. Non-compliant.
Yeah, but that was awesome. Thank you, Elfin Lead.
Not
for popping
Elfin
that up.
Lead.
No, not the account. That's the account that has it.
Oh God! Don't you know that? You'll get your account banned for sure.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
And yes, it does appear that the red bindi in particular symbolizes marriage.
Okay.
There's lots of different colors and different kinds.
Yes. I knew that specifically red was the thing, but I also, like I said, I am no expert at all. Quick question. We're going to be talking about trauma.
If you're not in the right headspace,
Yeah, if you're not in the right headspace for that, if that is something that you are not comfortable with hearing about right now, mute us, go for a walk, whatever it is that you need to do. But we are going to be talking about some deep shit. We're going to be talking about some deep shit. So I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable as if they have to be here.
yes.
Because you don't. The question is, or I guess the topic is, how trauma shapes people. And we're looking at Utena and Anthe versus Haruka and Michi.
Both are traumatized.
All of the above are traumatized, but how... And I'm not here saying that your trauma makes you stronger. But how are they, first of all, dealing with it? If they're dealing with it, are they wallowing it or using it as a springboard to make themselves better and do self-improvement? What are we thinking?
Oh, yeah,
Give a brief overview of their
That's a
traumas.
good idea.
That's a good idea.
There's going to be talk of essay, which honestly, that's 95% of it. Essay, emotional abuse and manipulation, gaslighting, death, incest is one. I feel like that's all the known ones that I can think of. Essay is like 95% of it.
Let's start with Utena and Anthe.
Utena's whole thing about wanting to become a prince is because a prince, like, quote unquote, saves her after her parents' death.
それは昔々のお話です。あるところにお父様とお母様を亡くし、深い悲しみに暮れる幼いお姫様がいました。そんなお姫様の前に 白馬に乗った旅の王子様が現れます。凛々しい姿、優しい微笑み。王子様はお姫様をバラの香りで包み込むと、そっと涙を拭ってくれたのでした。たった一人で深い悲しみに耐える小さな君。その強さ、気高さをどうか大人になっても失わないで。今日の思い出にこれを。私たちまた会えるわよね。その指輪が君を僕のところへ導くだろう。王子様がくれた指輪はやはりエンゲージリングだったのでしょうか。それはいいとして、お姫様は王子様に憧れるあまり、自分も王子様になる決意をしてしまったのです。でもいいの？本当にそれで。
That's how she processes that trauma, is deciding that he's going to become like this prince and then save people herself.
That's more of the series version. The movie one is after some unpacking, you find out that she and Togo were involved and he died, not
Okay.
saving her, but someone else. And because of his death, she felt like she needed to take over the role of prince, in my opinion, to save herself. But et cetera, et cetera. I'm psychoanalyzing.
I think unintentionally that's what it ends up being.
Mhm.
Like, that may have not been her intention behind it, but that is the catalyst for the prince persona is
Yeah.
saving herself.
And then for Anthe, that's
That's a lot.
Then
Anthony,
it's compounded if you continue to move forward with the idea that this is continuing after season 3.
which
So now
season-
she has the trauma from that, and then in the trauma that she has to relive in the movie.
Anthe honestly has one of the hardest stories.
Yes.
by taking on a role, which, yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Would you say, because that's the thing is I was also thinking, because the reason I was bringing up the Marine Cathedral, which is in season 3 of Sailor Moon, and it's specifically the episode, I think the title's something like Death of Uranus and Neptune, the Talismans appear. Michiru saves Haruka.
Mhm.
And the way she does that is very interesting to me. I really wish I had the clip. But what I think is the most interesting in that scene is that she calls her Haruka, not Uranus. And there's also a moment before they go into the cathedral where Neptune reaches out for Uranus but doesn't quite touch her hand, and Uranus never notices. Because I think Michiru knew that was going to be the last battle.
Which I could see that being a thing. Either she actually truly knew, or she had. This is the reason that I love Uranus and Neptune specifically, and also Pluto. They follow their gut feelings, and their gut feelings are like correct about 85% of the time. And this is I believe, the first time that you really see Michi being like, we're not making this out. We're not making out of this, but not actually saying anything to anyone. Also, she could have seen it in her mirror. Let's also be real
Mhm.
about that.
True. But I think it's interesting her whole goal, besides above the Taos, above everything else, was to save Haruka.
Mhm.
Because remember the iconic line, a world without Haruka isn't worth saving.
If it was between the world and my spouse, the world, I don't give a shit. And that's just me being gross, and I'm sorry. I was gonna comment on something Tape Layer said. Also looking to save her brother by taking on a role of the witch. Oh, I love portion of that portion of the movie where who's talking about it? It's Shiori talking about it, right? The riot
Maybe? Do you remember, Elle?
or the mob rather.
Is it
Anyway.
the mob?
Whoever is talking about it, they say that the prince turns out to be the Prince of the Flies or the Lord of the Flies, which also, I don't know how many people remember the Lord of the Flies, the book from high school
Lit.
AP Lit. But that's an interesting connection, I would say, because that's how the school is. It's a bunch of kids thrown together, given sharp objects, and told whoever wins gets a prize. And that's, I know that Lord of the Flies is like more nuanced than that, but it essentially is a bunch of kids that just go with power. And that's what this is, because the school council gets so pedestaled by the power of the Rose Bride. It's just not that really has anything to do with specifically trauma, but it also is trauma.
Would you say Haruka and Michiru's trauma is related more to their past or to their present?
I would say their trauma is related to their destinies. So it's not really their past. While I'm sure they are traumatized by the past, and also thinking about, if we think about the fact that like the outer senshi specifically were on their planets alone, didn't have anyone, blah blah blah. That in and of itself, that total isolation is very traumatizing. And they're not okay. And then the trauma of, first of all, watching your partner die and come back several times
True.
is a thing. And then just the burden.
Yeah, because they never quite get their own light.
Yeah. You're
Like they get it,
you live to protect this bitch.
and that's it.
And that bitch doesn't seem to give a shit about the fact that everyone has to protect her.
No, that drives me up a wall. That Usagi is always so self-sacrificing, and I'm like, but other people will have to try to protect you.
They're literally trying to protect her from the world and also herself.
Yes.
While she's on her martyrdom or whatever.
To me, though, their story is always such a sad one for some reason. I think it's, do we get to choose our own destiny, or does destiny get thrusted upon us? And in the name of Princess Tutu, there is happiness for those who accept their fate. There is glory for those who defy their fate.
Yeah.
That honestly rings Utena for me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It rings both.
It rings, and it's interesting because if you think about it, Uranus and Neptune kind of defying Usagi in the third season.
There's several times that they're like, no, you're wrong.
That is true. They do tell her she's wrong quite often.
You think that this is the best option. You are incorrect, which I respect. I enjoy having friends like that.
That was like part of their purpose for her, was to be like, hold on.
Yeah.
Let's think about that before you do that.
Maybe let's not kill ourselves. There's probably other choices.
Hey, player coming in, would you say they're doomed by the narrative in Sailor Moon, or is it more tragic because they chose to make the sacrifice?
Or do they actually choose?
Haruka does. Haruka gets an out. Michiru gives Haruka an out.
Yes and no.
I'm bringing up the scene. So this is where I say, oh yeah, I forgot Michiru comes to her in her dream. But this is where I would say Haruka gets the out, because Neptune reveals herself. I love Haruka's face. Except,
I'm sure the only thing that she's thinking is legs.
it's just also interesting and ball and red.
Blood. That's, I don't think that's a deeper meaning. I think it's
Okay.
literally just blood.
But when Michiru is injured, Haruka's is already existing. And if she didn't touch it, she could technically walk away.
But that's why I'm saying, could she have actually? Are we going on the assumption that if she walked away from that moment, she never would have ever woken up as Sailor Uranus? She would have been worse for it. But I think that one way or another, she would have been forced in a worse way, because it's not always, first of all, the inner senshi didn't get a choice, in my opinion.
None.
They just, hey, it's Luna. Boop. You're a senshi. GG's. And then Pluto literally never had a choice. I don't think that in terms of being a guardian, a senshi, there is an actual choice.
You think it's their starseed.
You are always going to be one, no matter what. And that could look differently, maybe, but I think that for them, that's written.
Would you say it's cruel to give them a taste of what life could have been like as a regular person?
I don't know if that was even a taste. I think that was the falsehood of choice. They thought that they could choose, but in reality, I don't think they really could have. Because, and I'm not saying that, I'm not actually bringing this up, but as you keep saying, Mama Serenity is a bitch. And I'm not saying that she's not. I just, first of all, don't think that she's evil, but I do think that she is entirely too young to be the fucking queen of the goddamn cosmos, essentially. And she made horrible choices. And I think her horrible choices are the reasons that the Senshi, first of all, A, exist, and B, do not get the choice. She has taken that choice away from them by creating Usagi. And I think it's all horribly, terribly linked and looped and will continue repeating until the end of whatever the fuck.
Elle, where do you stand?
It's kind of like in the middle, like when I think, because I've never really looked at it, that scene in Sailor Moon that deeply, but it's almost like by Michiru doing that, it allowed Haruka to choose when it happened. So maybe it was always going to happen, but it's almost like they gave her the choice to decide when it was going to happen.
I think, if anything, the only one that actually had a choice in that particular scene was Michiru. She chose to do
Did. And then Tape Player asks, would you all say there's a parallel there between roles being cast on the characters in Utena?
Oh, 110.
What roles do you guys think were cast on Utena and Anthony?
Champion and Bride, because I'm gonna take this off. I can't. Okay. Because specifically in the movie, and I want to say in the series as well, but specifically in the movie, Utena has no fucking clue what the duelist is, what the Mark of the Rose is, what the Rose Bride is. She has no fucking clue what any of that situation is. And it is thrust upon her by the fucking ghost of Toga, which I love. I don't know if anyone ever caught that, but at one point someone is like, "Who's Toga?" But they say Kiryu, which is his, what is that? His last name, I think. So technically he's there, but he isn't, because no one knows him as Toga. Everyone knows him as Kiryu, for those people that do know him. Just the ghost of her past fucking thrust that on her.
Toga thing that they change in the movie changes a lot of like Utena's backstory and how that whole process happened to begin with. She doesn't really know what's going on in the series either, but it's a lot heavier the way they did it in the movie.
Yeah. Which I personally, I think, prefer. But I feel like we've also meandered away from the main talking point, trauma-based people. And we've talked about Ruka and Michi's trauma. Do we want to attempt to dissect Utena and Anthy's trauma?
Let's try to do it in about 10 minutes.
Fair enough.
Okay, I'll let you line. Let's try to break this down in 10 minutes.
Oh, there's so much. Poor Anthy.
Poor Anthy.
Poor Anthy.
The moral of the story, yeah.
Just between Akio and then all the duelists, it's just poor Anthy. You don't get much of the whole other deals with the other duelists in the movie, so you don't have to deal with that as much through the movie version. But because I keep going back to that scene that Loki you were talking about, where she's basically like propositioning Utena because she's like, this is how this works, and it's all fine, and you're like, oh boy,
Yeah.
okay.
I would like to point out, though, even though Utena is, you're fucking weird for doing this, she does touch the titty.
She does.
She touches the tibby and then is, wait, no, you're weird. And I'm like, ma'am, please.
Tape Player brings up good point. I feel like a lot of their trauma is from trying to act outside the roles they were born with, inflicted from the outside world.
Yeah,
that's true.
And that is, I would say, 99% of the cast anyway.
And Tape Player, I'd argue you that Haruka and Michiru's partial trauma is from also trying to act outside their roles by trying to have their own wills, desires, and lights.
Yeah, they really are the only ones that have their own life that you actually hear about in the Sailor Moon like universe.
Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to break it down. So first of all, she has the trauma of her brother. However, she is also an active proponent in it, whether it be via Stockholm syndrome or
Mhm.
etc. Because specifically in the movie, he attempts to drug her, and then he's, "Wait, you weren't asleep? You're disgusting." As if he's not disgusting.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Team player just coming off with the straight backs tonight.
Truly,
Right?
truly.
Honestly, thank you for joining the discussion. Tape Player says it's so hard to break down what's the trauma with her because she was following her brother's orders for
Mhm.
over 2/3 of the series.
Yes. I am, however, going to bring it back to we need to talk about the actual movie. That's what
Mhm.
I'm focusing on. There's that of her brother
Mhm.
essaying her while also attempting to drug her. Then he stabs her,
Uh-huh.
which permanently takes away a piece of her,
Yeah.
which can also technically it's a double meaning in my opinion, whether it's a knife or the other thing that stabbed her in other places. That taking a piece of her and that taking a piece of her like soul slash adolescence. So she's not whole anymore.
Mhm.
And then that is continuously aggravated by the fact that she is essayed through the whole Rose Bride thing. And then, for what reason does the sword come out of her?
Mhm.
That's actually a great question. Why
It
does
is.
the sword come out of her?
She literally has a void in her sternum where her brother basically stabbed her,
Mhm.
presumably her heart. Is the sword her attempt to give herself or someone else who will help her the tools to help her? There's also that, and it's a lot. She goes through a lot, but she also does a lot of self-reflection in a way, which is why at the end of this series, which I know I just said we're talking about the movie, but which is why at the end of the series, she's the one that leaves. She's the only one that leaves. And I think that's also her working through it is the reason that absolutely, it was absolutely on point because I also would be like, but also, how was Utena able to focus? Because this hot ass chick was standing naked in front of her. Clearly, Utena is very much a bisexual because me as at that point a lesbian, I would have been like, "Oh, you have a hole in you. You're and I so in my opinion, half of that reaction is her being like, "There's a void in your chest," and then the other half of the reaction is tibbies because we're dealing with teenagers right now.
True. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Although I did see a comment by Ikuhara that said that technically everyone is aged up in the movie.
Oh, so they're in
Something like that. I feel
or
like the
they're
only
just
one
18-year-old seniors? I don't
yeah,
know.
something like that. Which that could also work technically.
Possible.
But yeah, he said that they're all supposedly aged up, to which in my opinion the only ones that are actually aged up are like Toga and Akio,
Yeah.
but also not by that much.
No,
You barely see
Akio's
Sayonji, so I don't even count him.
because he's the principal in the movie, right? Akio?
He's the
Is he just the president?
he's the assistant. At, he's first introduced as the assistant principal, but
Mm.
in the flashback,
Yeah.
he is the principal or the
That's
headmaster,
right.
whatever.
That's right. Yeah, so he's supposed to be, like, significantly older, which still throws me off
Yeah,
and makes it so much worse for some
truly,
reason to me. Just makes it
truly.
way than it already
Because
was.
then, because then I think about the fact that he's supposed to be the principal. And Anthe at one point was a freshman and just it's a whole lot of nope for me. A whole lot of
Mhm.
nope. Tape Player says, I think the whole scene is amazing for showing how queer intimacy can go when you bear trauma to a partner. So true, bestie.
Mhm.
So true. That whole scene, in my opinion, is like the epitome of the queer intimacy slash trauma dumping situation because it is incredibly intimate, especially with what Anthe says of you're supposed to capture the essence of your partner. And then poor Utena is literally about to as she's sitting there. And it's just the whole thing. And then Anthe being like, I'm also gonna get naked because you need to see what's up with me. Right after Utena's, hey, all of these pictures are of you. That's weird. Yeah.
Okay, and
What?
it's officially been 10 minutes of Lieutenant drama.
Okay.
Alright.
Do we have any more points we want to make? Because that is definitely the more traumatic series, I'd say, of the two.
It's the one that
yeah.
explores the trauma the most, I would say, because that whole series is built on the trauma.
Yes.
The trauma itself is a main character in Utena.
Truly.
Where it's not it's there in Sailor Moon, but it's not a main character.
No,
Their
it's
trauma is literally one of the main characters in Utena for the movie, the series, any of it.
Yep.
Particularly the movie. The trauma is very much a main character.
And I think it's literally because it's the series condensed into an hour and a half.
Yeah, so you've got to smash all of that trauma into an hour and a half, and it's a lot. And then add some extra, because they added extra trauma. It was like Utena now with extra trauma, basically, is that movie. So,
Would you say they resolved trauma in either shows? Yes, tentatively. I don't know if resolving is the word.
yeah,
that
I was
would
gonna say I don't know that trauma resolves necessarily.
no.
Utena and Anthe literally burst through their trauma.
Mm.
They literally work past it. So
Maybe move forward is more.
Oh, they're not
to look at
stuck
it.
by the trauma.
Yeah. Like
Closure.
it's not holding them. Yeah, maybe closure could be a good word.
I
Or
don't
being
know
able
if,
to move forward, fight.
yeah,
Like,
in spite of.
because it's still there.
Yeah.
It's just, can you continue forward?
Michi,
Yeah.
you wanted to circle back to something?
Yes. Thank you, Sailor Denzel, for finding the clip. This is transformative content. Give it a shot.
What?
Applied gunshots. Now, something I want you guys to notice, she's calling her Neptune, not Nature.
Not a speck of blood on her, though.
So that's the scene I was mentioning, because I swear that has Ikuhara written all over it. Right? Tape Player, do you not think that is like one of the most brutal scenes I'd say in Sailor Moon? Like the whole show, I'd say that's one of the like hardest ones.
I still think it's absolutely amazing that she has absolutely no blood on her.
Yes.
They got to keep their PG rating. So,
But
you know.
imagine that scene if they actually had gone for it.
Oh, it'd be Helsing or something. It'd be terrible.
It'd be absolutely horrible, yeah.
But I'd say that's probably one of their most traumatic moments between the characters. And it just gets to me because if you notice, Haruka never calls her Michiru.
Probably because she doesn't truly think that this is the end.
You think? You think she's not?
Either in denial or she just assumes that she's going to die soon, too. And they'll meet each other in the afterlife.
That scene reminds me of Utena for some reason.
It's the trauma.
Elle, what are you thinking? I see the gears.
I think part of it might be the persistent use of the flower in the scene that might be pulling Utena for you.
I can see that because of the petals.
Yes, and Utena does a lot of symbolism with the petals and the flowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when things are falling apart, then there's usually more flowers and more petals. When things are ending, that a lot in Utena. It does have a Utena feel to it. It might be the drama. I don't know.
Sorry, I just realized that the whole dancing scene in Utena, that if we're looking at it that way, that's a whole different meaning to me now.
How
One of the things, so Anne floods the garden, floods
Yep,
the
okay.
arena, and all of these petals, or not petals, the actual freaking whole flowers, which first of all doesn't make sense because roses grow on bushes. But anyway, anime, am I right?
It's fine. They grow in a mirror.
Something. So the arena floods, and then that water starts like going over the side and taking all of the roses with it in like a hellish cascade. So I feel like that's probably the first time that Utena actually is in a scenario where her adolescence is being
She's
heard.
being challenged for the first,
Yeah.
like her mindset's being challenged for the first
Yes.
time in that.
Thank you.
Auntie's breaking through, essentially, is
Yes.
what Cascade of the Flowers is. Yeah.
Michi, I don't know how to pronounce that username. If I were to guess, and please correct us if I'm completely wrong, Drakea?
Yeah. I just wanted to share because I'm a big fan and I'm so glad that you're in the chat. But this artwork that they did actually based on what our episode is on tonight. So I just wanted to share their art because it's so cool. In their caption, they say, "This is something I wanted to draw for many years now. So much I would have loved to have seen the Sailor Moon Supers movie that I even made a logo for it. I call this movie Sekai no Owari, the end of the world. I used Utena's armor design inspired for Sailor Uranus as well as her horses. For the Black Pegasus, you will find the whole explanation within the images."
And it's very good art.
So
And like I
just
said,
had,
If I completely butchered your name, please let me know.
Yes, like we and then I was like trying to make sure that we could say it right. But I'll make sure to link that in the description.
Yes. But yes, and the thing that I remember when I first watched the Utena movie, that particular scene right before the dance, where Anthe swings the fucking axe, and you're like, no.
Wait,
And then they do that awesome repeating thing. Michi, were you not watching the movie?
no, I am witness. I have a witness right here.
Yeah, we watched it. It was a little while ago, and my brain still to this day mixes up the series and the movie.
Fair enough.
It's almost like I have to see the picture in my head and go, what outfit is Anthe wearing? And then I know which one I'm like looking at. Is it the ball gown or is it the other dress? And then I know
Yeah,
which
fair
picture
enough.
it's coming from.
But
That's one of
it's
my favorite scenes from this movie, though, is this whole like
also,
the
yes.
roses
And also very poignant opening line of that song. This rose is our destiny.
And Hanukkah and Michi are always associated with roses.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I would like to move on to our next point, which I think is also going to be a little bit of a time situation. Yes, Susan. Yes.
That's a good point. So can we talk about this real quick?
Yes, please.
So they say, I think the most powerful part is when Anthe asks Utena if she isn't afraid of standing in the edge. And later on, Anthe standing right there. What do you think?
Specifically barefooted. And her toes are curling over the edge. I think it is rather poignant and very heavy on that front. Because it's essentially Utena is just standing there because she just found the arena and it's all sprawling in front of her. So for her, I think it's almost the beginning. It's a brand new view of things. For Anthe, it's dark. She's essentially in like half of her uniform with no shoes on. And she is standing so close that one gust of wind could just. And I think for her, it's not necessarily a change of viewpoint, but it's like kind of a self-reflection of I don't know if I can continue doing this.
So it's all about perspective of how you see the edge.
Because for Anthe, the edge is basically an out. Right. For Utena, it's a brand new viewpoint and an opportunity. But also scared. Yes. I'm going to be completely honest, though. Super real talk and off topic, but 90% of what I would say even 99.9% of what I'm saying right now, a lot of it is literally coming to me as I'm thinking about it right now, and none of it is actually scripted into anything. Most of this I'm just bullshitting, and if it happens to hit, then it happens to hit. I would like to talk about growing pains. What role adolescence plays in growing up, in how it bridges between childhood and being a grown up. For example, in Utena, the school is childhood, and the outside or the end of the world is adulthood. And the movie, very specifically, is called Adolescence of Utena, so it's very much like on the nose, and they're not trying to be coy about it. But do you think that there's any sort of bridge like that in Sailor Moon for Haruka and Michiru?
I'd almost argue it's their extent of Usagi and manners.
Okay.
Hear me
So
out.
accepting themselves as a part of a team?
Accepting their destiny, their role, but also finding themselves in it.
Okay. So piece of the puzzle sort of situation.
Yes.
Okay.
They fight so hard against their destiny, or they try so hard. But in the season 3, they are black and white characters to the point of madness. Like even at some point, I'm looking at them like,
yeah, it's been a hot minute since I've rewatched the whole series, but I do remember that there was a couple of points where I was like, are you guys sure you want to open your face and say that?
okay, I'm interested. Why not? And I could be completely off. Like I'm all open for hearing ideas. True. In the manga, they were shown almost adult at first.
I would argue that in the manga they are shown in Usagi's point of view.
Oh.
And for Usagi, they are cool, they're mature, they're grown up, they're so like far above the inners. So I think it's more of a lens than anything, because in reality, they don't have their shit together. Absolutely not.
It's when you grow up that you realize no adult has their shit. Truly.
True. And then they even joke on when they were regular students in the cosplay movie.
True.
Jakea, again, if I'm mispronouncing it, please tell me. What would you say would be their bridging moment? Also, I would like to point out that they were technically in high school.
Yes.
Technically, big technical.
Technically in high school because Haruka and Michiru were in the high school portion of Mugen, whereas Setsuna was in the college portion. She was working on her PhD.
She's the sad.
She was a lab assistant, so that technically means that she was working on the PhD.
I've never really looked at Haruka and Michiru
So
in
intensely.
these lights. But yes, and now I'm going to because I find it very fascinating.
Welcome to my brain.
But it's very interesting because I hadn't really thought about the fact of how in this story they're portrayed so much older than everyone else, even though they're not.
Yeah.
No, I think 2 years. 2-year age difference.
Yeah, they're like 16, 17, something like that, I think.
Which is why I think that when we see them in the story, we see them through Usagi's perspective. Even though we
Right.
see Usagi and we see her, which I would like to point out that there are times when she sees herself as a mature person, and she most definitely is not in the story. So
But now I'm like I'm gonna look at it all with, okay, so are we just seeing everyone the way that Usagi sees them? And is that how they're being drawn in the manga? Are we seeing her perception of these people? Which I think makes a ton of sense, and now it's going to hurt my brain for a while.
and it also makes a ton of sense if you look at, for example, how she sees Chibiusa, especially when
Yes.
she first arrives. She sees this like gremlin child.
Yes.
Which,
Is
like,
it
is a gremlin
off,
child.
really?
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, that also just came to me where I was like, that's probably all from Usagi's point of view.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. A lot of the situations also make a lot more sense.
Yes. Oh no, now I'm gonna have to go watch or read all of it. Probably read all of it again with
It's a good-
that lens. It's so good.
Let's talk about Relief comment.
Interestingly, I would say that in accepting Usagi, they're not accepting their destiny. They're actually accepting Usagi's offer to break away from what they thought their destiny had to be and realize that they can make their destiny what they want it to be. You see this both with Pluto believing that she had to spend the rest of eternity at the door, and with Uranus and Neptune believing that they couldn't be a part of a team because they had to protect the boundaries of the kingdom. Which parallels revolutionary girl Utena in terms of representing the ability to be an individual instead of just a societally prescribed role,
Almost like Usagi is healing the trauma of Queen
while
Serenity.
also dishing out her own trauma.
Yes. Yes. She's trying so hard.
I would say that she's trying so hard to heal the past traumas that she is inadvertently causing more trauma. Because she's trying to make sure that her friends are so safe that she's sacrificing herself, which in turn gives them more trauma because they have to see their best friend die over and over again.
That's a very good description of Usagi, really.
Yeah.
Of that character.
Sweet Summer Child.
Basically,
so-
yes. She means well, but
She girl bosses way too close to the sun.
yes.
Way too close.
She literally has an entire team designed to keep her from girl bossing too close to the sun.
And yet
she does it anyway.
And yet she does it anyway. Yeah, so I would, yeah, that's.
I have an interesting.
What's up?
So, playing in my brain since we were looking at the
Uh-huh.
artwork. Saki on a white Pegasus and Haruka on a black Pegasus. I'm thinking it's like Geek
Yeah, could be.
opposite.
Are you thinking about like good and evil?
Yes.
Okay.
Why would they cast Haruka as an evil role for trying to save Neptune?
because she's not saving Usagi. Because she's choosing an individual over the world.
Oh, it's interesting.
It is.
It's a take. It's a take. It's not a hill that I would die on. For
No,
Utena,
but I think it's an
specifically.
interesting concept.
Because for Utena, it's not choosing another individual, it's choosing yourself and how you move forward and how you grow up. Versus with Sailor Moon, it's how you can help the world.
Mhm.
How you can be a helpful individual to the world as a part of a team. Whereas,
What would you?
sorry,
Oh,
real quick. Whereas with Utena and Anthe, they are not a part of a team. They're together, but they're not a team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're really not.
They're not.
They're not. They're moving like parallel with each other, but not. They're not working together.
Yeah.
Cooperatively.
They're literally using each other as stepping stones. Specifically, Anthe ends up using Utena as a stepping stone at the end of the
Right.
series. And then I guess she has a change of heart or realizes that she can't move forward in the world without having Utena there with her, beside her. We will never know because there's no fucking continuation. But that's me reading into it.
Ikuhara, if you're watching this.
If you're watching this,
Like
please
Ikuhara.
don't make another one. I don't know if my brain can handle it.
But if you just want to give us a clue,
Just send me the script. I'll read that.
like what would have been the theme of the movie that Ikuhara was going to make about Haruka and Michiru? I get it, independent of the series, but it still has to exist in the same universe. The second major book.
The Doctorate of Utena. What would be the theme?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Every Sailor Moon movie up to that point had a theme. Don't make me start talking about the old titles. We had friendship with the first one. And then the second one was all about finding love in your heart.
Mhm.
So what would Ikuhara have been thinking be the theme of that movie?
With how wild that summary is, I'm not sure.
Because he had to have been going somewhere with it. Like, you just don't think of that type of imagery and not have a backstory.
That is
around it.
incorrect.
Yeah,
I can say 100% as someone that is an artist, that is 100% incorrect. This is gonna make me sound crazy as shit, and maybe I am, but I have flashes of things that I would love to draw. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's any sort of backstory behind it. Sometimes I just want to draw some smut. And
Yeah.
sometimes I want to draw the most like gut wrenching thing that you can think of. There doesn't necessarily have to be a backstory behind it. And considering how the types of role models that Ikuhara had said that he has, one of which being Miyazaki, while Miyazaki has a general idea of what a movie would be, that general idea gets reworked literally 5 times. He, being Miyazaki, writes a portion of the script, then he rewrites the portion 5 times, then it goes into production, and while it's in production, he's writing the rest of the script, and I kid you not, that is actually how he works. So by the time that he has rewritten every single portion of that script 5 times, that meaning and that movie has changed probably close to 20 times. That doesn't mean that it's any worse or better. He's making masterpieces. His backstory is changing. Literally, they'll be like, hey, Miyazaki is coming out with a new film. It's titled blah, blah, blah. And he's literally still writing the goddamn story right as they're doing the announcement. So
Cosplayers in a hotel room that I would
Truly.
work on. Had to get it that in there for your audience, Elle.
No more, no Con Crunch 2020.
Something I was thinking about, because I've actually read a fanfic similar to the Ikuhara movie. Can't remember it at this moment, but I remember what I thought I had about it. So Usagi is going after Haruka, who has stolen the talismans to save Michiru. Does that imply Usagi is going to stop her and forsake Michiru?
No. Because
What?
Usagi is physically incapable of doing that.
But that's the thing. She's trying to
That
stop
doesn't
her.
mean that she's going to forsaken.
Right.
Because, okay, the way that Usagi works, I say as if I'm a goddamn expert, but if she can save literally everyone, she will. At the cost of even herself. She sees herself with the universal monetary value for an exchange versus everyone else she sees as fixed points in the universe. So she is willing to bet herself over anyone else. Yeah, the power of love, hope, and friendship. Truly.
Yeah. So just find
You're so right.
other option.
For Usagi, there is always a loophole.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a loophole because the biggest thing, and this is, I love and hate that arc. The biggest thing with Saturn was if that glaive falls, the world is destroyed. Period. The glaive fell. The only world that was destroyed was Hotaru, but she was reborn, which is like death and reincarnation, blah, 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 blah. But Usagi used herself in the transaction. She sacrificed herself in that transaction. She sacrifices herself in literally any transaction that she knows she can make sure that everyone else around her stays safe.
And you know what's sad?
Do you agree with me?
I can see Haruka not even asking Usagi for help and just stealing.
Oh, yeah. That
Oh
yeah.
Without talking to us,
That impulsive choice. Yeah.
That's basically what was fucking happening in the series.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh God, she would.
That's basically what was happening in the series, though. They literally have decided that there is no other way that they can do it other than their way. And Usagi was like, no, that is incorrect. While they're like, you're young and dumb, shut up. That's what it boils down to. All of their interactions are like, you're stupid. And she's, no, yeah.
And then we got some comment. Tape player asked, does Sailor Moon ever address that as being
No.
self-destructive?
Nope. It totally is, but they don't ever directly.
In fact, I would say that they encourage it. But if you remove the trauma from both sets of characters, do they still exist in a meaningful way?
Una and Anthe probably not. I would think.
No,
No.
they are
Trauma. Would Haruka and Michiru still be as meaningful?
I believe so
Oh.
because their trauma is not front and center. Their trauma is quietly whispered in a corridor, whereas Utena and Anthe are on the bleachers screaming about their trauma.
I could see them standing on the bleachers screaming.
Also that,
Literally,
yes.
that scene could have easily been in the movie. That is something that would 100% happen. They aren't going to moo like cows, though. That's just for Nanami.
Nanami is your favorite.
I love
is a
Nanami.
mood. Like Nanami.
Nanami is a
full
mood.
I'm so sorry.
I love Nanami, though. I do.
Okay, hold on. I'm about to ask the real question. Who's Chu?
Chu!
Diana.
Yes. That maybe, yeah. Could see that.
I feel
Oh
like
my
you would
gosh,
have to
Choo
merge
Choo.
all three of the cats. Because Choo Choo does some shit.
His purpose, I still am not 100% sure.
He's
of.
literally there to just fuck
It's
in my
yeah,
opinion.
it's just there, and you're like, why does this monkey mouse thing exist? What
Love
is
him
this
down.
thing? Why is it here? It just shows up randomly in the corners of scenes.
Chu is the author.
Chu is Drosselmeyer from Princess
Probably. Mama Serenity is true. Anyway,
Mama Serenity.
that or that weird alligator thing.
Do you like me?
Oh gosh, Madoka Magica. You want to talk about trauma?
That's magical girl trauma.
Oh, did not expect that when I watched that show. Let me tell you.
Oh, did you enjoy that tape player? Awesome. I'm down.
Oh, yeah.
We're want feedback, so if this is something you want, we can definitely do
We
it.
should do compare and contrast of Sailor Moon and Princess Tutu.
Ooh.
We're gonna love to do that. Yeah. Oh, and just Ikuhara, you're amazing.
Drukea, and please enjoy your vacation.
Yes. Thank you for coming. Please come back. We'd love to hear more
Yes.
discussions.
Brings us.
If that's the thing we're getting to.
Oh boy.
This probably brings us to the end of our show. Thank you guys for joining us for the first episode of season 3. It was a doozy. I'm sorry that y'all had to listen to me ramble again. We'd like to thank our guest Elle for joining us tonight for our Mooney Mayhem as well as our Utena Mayhem. As always, our fellow Moonies, please make sure to follow us on our socials. You can find those in our link tree in our description and also on the screen. And don't forget to join us Saturday,
Oh my
January
gosh.
27th,
A lot of work.
as we go on another Mooney adventure, 7 to 10 p.m. EST. And now apparently I have to self-plug myself. And you can find me as the Comfy Witch on pretty much any place that matters. I have recently made a Reddit, and if you feel like looking at Good Omen smut, you can find that there. But I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and yeah. And it's the Comfy Witch, all one word.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the Comfy Witch pretty much everywhere. I'm even on Blue Sky, even though I don't use it. But there you go.
Elle, go ahead.
Sure. You can find me pretty much anywhere at LaVie Cosplay. My podcast is done with Ash, who is the other half of LaVie Cosplay. So I'm one of the hosts of Shenanigans Cosplayers Say, which is a comedy, cosplay, and convention podcast. So we discuss our neurodivergent adventures in congoing and cosplay in our now 25th anniversary of cosplay. So we hit 25 years this year, and LaVie Cosplay is 10 years. I'm working on like Sinbad from Magi right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? More Magi.
I just realized that I technically on and off have been cosplaying since 2001, and that's depressing. Anyway.
We like to say we've definitely been cosplaying longer than you've been born when we MC to our audience. And the older we've gotten,
You make me want to cosplay Outlaw Star for some reason. Anyway,
please do.
I will.
I'm also making Hinoto from X.
Yes, but I've been on Elle's podcast. It's a lot of
Yes.
fun. Definitely go check it out.
That is how we got on this topic, was you came to hang out with us. And then I learned that, that this was supposed to be a Machiru and Haruka movie, and I died.
I
on
know.
my own
I
podcast.
great. I saw your face, and you just were like, "Excuse me."
I like just blue screened for a while.
You're so
Yep.
I'm
Alright, anything
literally
else?
following right now.
perfect then. And it's me. As always, I have been your host, Michi. You can find my personal socials at MEW21, sometimes underscore. For Eternal Mooncast, we are a Twitch and a YouTube exclusive platform. Previously recorded content from our show comes out for Bishoujo Senshi Slumber Party, which is part of Eternal Mooncast. It is our, it's a reaction style channel, and it's also going style show. Now that we're going to be exploring with Relia and Monica, and we're going to be watching the deep dub from start to finish.
Oh no.
And we're going to give our commentary because of copyright. The reactions will be on Patreon, and the discussion will be on YouTube. And that's a new start that we're going to start next Saturday, which is why I brought it up. We appreciate any likes, comments, follows, or however you would like to help us. We especially love subscribers on YouTube. As a quick reminder, these are just our personal opinions, and we celebrate all respectful Mooney opinions here. We are working hard on the show to be a place for Moonies to come together and discuss their theories and their love and passion for Sailor Moon. Remember, as Sailor Mini Moon once said, just because you're a girl doesn't mean you have to wait for a prince to come along on a white horse.
Facts.
Good night, folks.
Night.